Hello, I'm Nick Luck.
And I'm Rosie Tapner.
And together we'll be presenting coverage of this year's Land Rover Burghley Horse Trials, streamed live and exclusive over 5 days on Burghley TV.
Yes, for just £20, a Burghley TV subscription will give you an access all areas pass to the heart of the action, from the very first horse inspection to the final trophy lift, and so much more.
Our 5-star event coverage includes exclusive previews, live interviews, expert analysis, behind-the-scenes content, celebrity guests, and masterclasses with Carl Hester and Yogi Breisner.
And when the event coverage stops, we keep going, hosting an evening highlight show today at Burghley, where we will review the best of the day's action with studio guests, as well as taking a look at what else has gone on around the event.
And if that wasn't enough, on Friday you'll be able to watch live coverage of the Dubarry Burghley Young Event Horse Final.
All this direct to your laptop, tablet or TV for just £20. So don't miss out. Head to the Burghley website and subscribe today. See you there.
Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast and the latest episode in our Inside Burghley series, because listeners, the horse trials is fast approaching and the countdown is very much on. And I'm delighted to welcome our two guests to the show today, who are going to give us more of an insight into the bigger picture of the Land Rover Burghley Horse Trials in terms of the local community, in terms of Burghley Estate, where obviously the event is run, and it is just the most incredible backdrop to the horse trials. I am currently sat in the library of Burghley House. We are a week out from the event. The excitement is palpable, listeners. Everybody is so busy, and I feel very grateful that my two guests today have carved in a bit of time into what is no doubt an exceptionally jam-packed diary. And I'm going to start by welcoming Miranda Rock, our host here, Executive Chair of the Burghley House Preservation Trust, to give you your full official title. But firstly, thank you for having us, Miranda, and it is very, very good to have you with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
We're really looking forward to this. David Pennell also sat alongside me, CEO of Burghley. David, the bigger picture of Burghley is something that we're going to talk about a lot more in this show, and I think it's a really important one because it's a very, very busy time and an exciting time for the estate as a whole.
Really exciting, and delighted to have horse trials back after 3 years away, and planning starts well in advance, and so being a week out is also quite nerve-wracking when you say it like that, Nicole. We're nearly there.
I know, you're on the train and the train just keeps rolling at this point. And everybody is kind of remembering it, all of those sort of intricacies, the details of a big event back after 3 years. And Burghley, absolutely no strangers to running plenty of big events, and we'll talk about a few of them. I think you've got another one on this weekend just before the horse trials as well, which just adds to the excitement, adds to the logistics of it all. Miranda, I wanted to ask you first the history of the horse trials, because it was your grandfather, the Marquess of Exeter, who brought the horse trials to Burghley back in 1961. Just give us an insight into the history and how it came about that we have got this magnificent venue and this magnificent horse trials today.
Well, as I understand it, Nicole, it's a little bit, it was a happy fortune. It was 1961, as you say, and the event was being run already at Harwood House in Yorkshire. And that year they had an outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And there was communication between the two houses, and my grandfather said, we'd absolutely be thrilled to run the horse trials here at Burghley. The event, remember, was nowhere near the scale that it has become today, so it was a much easier decision, perhaps. And the horse trials, as it was, moved to Burghley, became the Burghley Horse Trials, and has stayed ever since, and grown into what we now see as this extraordinary event erupting outside the windows.
Literally erupting outside the windows. And in fact, the year after it came here, there was a European Championships, which happened pretty quickly as well, wasn't there?
I know. I think it must have been an immense learning curve, literally galloping to keep up with what demand, excitement, opportunity there was for the riders. My grandfather was a passionate horseman. He rode all his life. He kept a pack of hounds here at Burghley. The stables were buzzing. It was a very different time. And in the way that these estates have always been largely equestrian, when you drive up to Burghley, the first thing you see is an immense stable yard built by Capability Brown for the 9th Earl of Exeter. It dominates the front north side of the house, and it really reminds us just how important the horse was in the history of an estate like Burghley.
And your grandfather was very passionate and very successful, very good sportsman as well, wasn't he?
He was. We're immensely proud of that, and it's some of the most romantic history, really, and everyone who has watched the film Chariots of Fire will remember Nigel Havers brilliantly playing a hurdler, and that was indeed my grandfather, and he won a gold medal at the 1928 Olympics in Amsterdam for hurdling, and other great awards as well. While he wasn't that thrilled with the film, he felt it wasn't quite an accurate portrayal of history. I think it was an extraordinary thing to do while he was at Cambridge, and it's a wonderful part of family history.
It's amazing. David, in terms of the estate as a whole, just give us an overview, if you can, of what happens on a day-to-day basis and kind of the different components that make up Burghley.
Sure. So, I mean, Burghley is a large landed sort of traditional estate, but over the last 10, 20 years, it's had to evolve, and it's got this amazing visitor business where we welcome people into the house to see the collections that are second to none. But also we have a gardens, and then we have forestry teams and property teams. We also run a golf course, for example. We've got, nearly 200 staff across our books, and we run a property portfolio of let houses, residential property, commercial property, shops, farms, forestry. We have some quarries, so it's a multi-headed sort of business, Burghley, and it sort of goes all year round. There's not a quiet sort of day of the year, really. And so, coming up this weekend, for example, we've got the Fine Food Fair up at Burghley House, and we hope to welcome in sort of 8,000 to 10,000 people to that, and there's lots of trade stands coming in. But then that is also impacted because we've got horse trials building, 200 yards away, and that's, classed as a building site under health and safety regs. So we contain lots of people in another area of the park while we ready another bit. And so there's always something going on at Burghley. There's always new adventures. There's always growth that we need. The last few years have been very tough.
I was going to say, actually, we're obviously so excited to have the horse trials back, but as so many people have found with different facets of their business, have been affected massively over the last 3 years. I imagine Burghley, to a big degree, has become a real place of solace to a lot of the local community, because actually the outside areas were unbelievably special in a time that, once we got over the initial lockdown restrictions and everything else, its place in the community became even more important. Would that be fair?
Totally, and I think Miranda will agree with me. The one thing that we saw over the COVID lockdowns was people enjoying Burghley Park. Burghley Park is their green space of Stamford, and every day people would walk in Burghley Park, and they would find their time of day to walk. Some people would do it early morning, some people do it late at night. Others would just pile out whenever they could get the kids and the buggies and the dogs and everything out for their one walk a day, as it turned out to be in those first 3 weeks. And we've seen that love of Burghley Park grow, and we're really proud of that. And actually, to receive thank you letters in the last 2 years has also been really heartening to see people enjoy it, I think, that way.
I agree. I think it's we all felt it. We felt immensely lucky to be somewhere so special. Don't forget, Burghley's not a house just lived in by one family. This is a little village. There are many people who live and work here on site, and we all enjoyed it. Plenty of people went fishing in the lake, and we sat under the trees like everybody else did, and walked our dogs, and getting to see all those people. And some days it was really pretty crowded out there, but that was wonderful. It was just another invention for Burghley, adapting to what was needed.
And the community aspect is something I know you're very passionate about, and something that I think when you talk to anybody at Burghley and you talk to anybody in the local town, if you can hear a drone buzzing outside, listeners, then there is a very special cross-country course preview coming your way very soon. You might hear it, you might not, but it is going to be epic. That is all I'll say. All go. Yeah, in terms of the local community, it's something you're very passionate about, and kind of building the links is something that is hugely important. And I guess in terms of, we bring it back to the horse trials, the local economy gets a huge boost from, a couple of 100,000 people coming in over the 5 days and everything that entails.
Yes, absolutely it does. And we all shop locally, and getting to know people locally, local groups, local charities, local schools, you really understand the impact of an event of this scale, and it's from the small to the large. It's the hotels that are packed out over a year in advance and can do very well from that. It's the corner shop that can sell out of milk. It's everybody here is affected by the horse trials. Our neighbours are very tolerant of the traffic issues. We understand that is challenging, but for the large part, I think the local people around here, us included, we all celebrate this event because it's such an indicator of something that's exciting and booming, and it's a really wonderful way to use this park.
It's going to feel like quite a celebration, I think, coming back this weekend after having had 3 years away. I think we've all kind of not forgotten, but we will remember the kind of the special feeling, the buzz, the excitement, and how excited people will be to be back here. David, how does it fit in? You mentioned, all of the different facets of Burghley Estate and everything that goes on and how you've adapted a little bit. How does the horse trials fit within that, and how does it sort of all link together?
It's a really good sort of question as to how Burghley works together. So, for example, thankfully that it's greening up outside. That tiny bit of rain has just brought the brown, dry, arid parkland back to a bit of grass. But before this week we had a full-on drought. So our shepherd was struggling to feed the sheep off the grass, which meant he was hand feeding them, which meant that he was really busy, which meant that he was meant to cut all the long grass on the golf club where we park 600 caravans, for example. He bales that grass on the golf club for hay during the winter for the sheep flock. But because he was too busy feeding, the hay didn't get cut, which means we've got 600 caravans about to arrive and we've still got long grass. And so there's a knock-on effect on everything. And at the same time, for our sheep, the grass is actually greener on the other side because they saw a lovely cross-country course that is, cared for and looked after, and they actually thought that they wanted to get in there. So
and they did,
which then upsets the course designers because and the course builders because they're working their socks off to get it prepared, as the best 5-star track in the world. And so that's just one impact. Then we shut the golf course for 10 days. We welcome in hundreds of thousands of people. But we also changed the traffic flow around Stamford. So the shops sort of trade differently. And whereas the pubs and the hotels do really well, 20 years ago when you drove through Stamford, you'd jump out of your car in a queuing traffic, go and buy something in a shop, jump back in your car and not have moved 5 yards. Now, we managed to move things a lot quicker, so the retail has changed. In other aspects, it requires our forestry team to do significant works in the park. Our heritage trees here at Burghley are just amazing. But to put that many people underneath them in a drought or a wet year, they're equally as bad. We worry about our trees. And so our forestry team are working really hard to check every single tree. They check every single tree twice. We spend over £40,000 preparing the park on forestry terms.
Dare I ask how many trees there are?
Worryingly, I know this figure. There are 4,000 trees within Burghley Park, and every single one of them is GPS'd.
That's amazing. And actually, listeners, I'm going to set you a challenge because if you're coming to Burghley for the event, or if you're just coming to Burghley at some point over the next year or whenever it might be, look up at those trees because they are just extraordinary. I was out when we were filming the cross-country course preview with Derek de Grazia last week, and I had this sort of tree obsession because somebody pointed one out to me and then I just couldn't stop. They just tell a story all by themselves, and it's one of those things that actually, you can go through life and not look at what's around you, but actually if you're here at Burghley, pay attention because the history in the estate and the history in those trees, which are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, probably older, but is just absolutely extraordinary. So there you go. Take a leaf out of my book, listeners, and go tree watching. Hey, tag us in a selfie with your tree at Burghley. Would be delighted at Eventing Podcast. You know the drill. But look, it really is unbelievably special. And I think you make a very good point because there is just so much more that goes into all of those different facets of having that many people here and making sure it's safe for everybody. But I'd never thought, a tree branch is going to drop on somebody. Just wouldn't even cross my mind.
No, I mean it's a fascinating topic in itself. It also concerns us quite a lot. But this morning my day started with a quick meeting on site about the lake water level, drought. Thankfully in the COVID years, to keep the forestry, gardens, greens and course builders teams busy, because you can't furlough those sort of teams. They have no work to do at home. They did 4 or 5 years worth of lake dredging in 1 year. So thankfully the lake is that bit deeper. Thankfully there's more water volume, and thankfully that is now going on the course. But even that is being tested, because there has to be a water level that protects this house for fire hydrant purposes. So we will get to that point, I think, probably within the next few days, that we're going to make a hard decision on, do we keep watering or do we pump in from somewhere else?
Thankfully, the rain dance, listeners, has been coming in a little bit. There has been more rain in the last sort of week than we've seen, in months and months and months. But actually, I was going to ask you about the impact of the drought this year, because not only are we coming back after 3 years that it has been since the event has been able to run, but actually the circumstance in which we're able to look at it this year, actually thankfully from the COVID perspective, things, touch wood, are all much more straightforward than we ever could have dreamed they would be. But actually the drought has been a fairly significant thing to overcome. But it sounds like actually the work that was done over the last 2 years, when we didn't know we were going to have a drought, has actually now started to pay dividends.
Amazing foresight on our part, obviously, Nicole.
Obviously. That crystal ball.
I think COVID taught us, a few things. And preparation for horse trials is an all year round job.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in the last 2 months. It happens for 12 months a year. And, Martin, as new event director, is already looking forward to the 23-24 event, and how will the course evolve? How will our course building team and how will Derek evolve in the future? How drought affects that this year is really evident. They're doing a huge amount of other work other than watering. They're aerating the ground, they're verti-draining, they're getting that course the best it can possibly be. And when you drove around it with Derek the other day, I think it was in really good condition given the dry
100%.
conditions we've had.
Yeah.
And so that's a phenomenal skill set that we've got. And we've maintained all of those skill sets during COVID because we didn't want to lose any of them, because horse trials are so important to us.
And a lot of these people have been here for a very, very long time and a part of the Burghley landscape, a part of the Burghley infrastructure, Miranda. And it's something that is unbelievably important in terms of the volunteer network. I'm sure you see it with the house, but also the horse trials. There are so many people that give so much to enable it to go ahead, because they just love it as much as we all do.
Absolutely. And I think, we'll get a rush from the horse trials because being part of a big team is a very exciting thing. And then we're so grateful to all the volunteers and people that come here to work and paid for it, but without all of their dedication and skill, this event wouldn't happen. It's quite normal at Burghley to have members of staff who've been here for 40 years, and some of our retired staff, our veterans, still come back. They love it. We love seeing them, and that long knowledge and years of experience, through bad years, wet years, another dry year, pays dividends. But you're right, it's an army of people who come here. It's the brilliant parking guys who in their high vis who are there smiling and waving at the crack of dawn, getting the cars in, litter picking, emptying the loos. It's all the stuff that goes on that just means that it's a beautiful event and everyone can have a wonderful time. All the hospitality side of things and everything that goes into making this a great weekend takes a lot of people.
I always think some of the most important jobs are the jobs that you don't realise are happening, because when they don't happen, everybody notices. Exactly. And yet if they're happening and you don't notice them, that means they're running really, really well. How do you effectively balance history and tradition? I mean, Burghley Estate is just the most magnificent park. And listeners, I actually said to David when I saw him outside about 7 o'clock this morning, I really did drag them in this early. It's one of those places that never fails to just give me goosebumps. It just, no matter how many times I've seen it, and I've been fortunate enough to seen it plenty of times now, that just I always kind of take a breath, take a step back and go, wow, it's just extraordinary. How do you balance the history, the tradition, everything that goes with that, and actually moving forwards? Because, as you've both said, actually you've had to adapt and change over the last 10, 20 years. So how do you get that balance right? And
that's a really interesting question. And actually it's one that David and I wrestle with every week. Because there are opportunities here, there are commercial opportunities here, and we very often say no. And we both believe that it's important that the priority is Burghley House Park, those amazing trees that we've spoken about. We can't replace those. It would take 300 years. And the care and the maintenance of that is our priority. What is worth it here? It's got to be something that really fits with what we believe in. And, an estate that's been going for nigh on 500 years and has a diverse portfolio, although we face great challenges, also has the luxury of looking far into the future and being able to say, let's just do nothing with that barn because for the moment it might be beginning to fall down. It's not the right time. We don't need to get everything done tomorrow. We need to get everything done right. And that sometimes takes a bit of time, a bit of circumspection and a bit of balance, because otherwise we will spoil what we are so lucky to enjoy here.
Yeah, and David, you're nodding because actually it's one of those things, isn't it, that you sort of have that wrestle, as Miranda very aptly put it, of, the opportunities that might come and actually protecting and doing what is right for Burghley in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's sort of how it fits with who we are that I think is, one of our key tests when we look at things. And we don't want to pick all the cherries at once, and there's lots of opportunities that we can do, but can it fit into what we're doing at the moment? Is it an opportunity for us? Does it work with what our teams are capable of doing as well? And does it continue who we want to be? There's a wonderful sort of culture around an estate, of kindness and family and as Miranda says, people come back year on year for a reason. We don't see a huge churn. We've seen a slight bit, but I think that's a standard in the market. But actually, there's loyalty, and I think that's a big factor of it. And we see that at Horse Trials. Our volunteers, if they're not back this year, I think it's very sadly because they've had a really rough COVID and the last couple of 3 years, and they're not well, or one of their family's not well. But 2/3 of them are back. Without really having to ask. They've probably rung us more than we've rung them. And that's really exciting.
It's very, very special. And I think it's one of the things that we love about the eventing community, but the wider Burghley community as well. It's a massive part of it. What does Event Week look like for you, David? Because obviously the house is still here. It's still open to the public during the event? Not open to the public during the event. Okay.
Not open to the public during the event. It will shut on the Wednesday.
Yeah.
When Trot Up sort of is just about to start, the house will be sort of closing for the final time for a few days.
You could come Wednesday morning?
So you could come Wednesday morning.
There you go,
absolutely. Make a whole day of it, lunch in the Orangery, and then head over to the Trot Up and look for me in a bowler hat, because my event days are very different to Miranda's event days. And so my event is helping site, basically, Martin and the team. Because I know the park, I know the area, I know the local geography, so that I think my scary formal title is head site steward and traffic steward, and so I'm one of the ones in the bowler hats, and we need to get people in efficiently, we need to get people out efficiently, and one of my favourite times of the day is first thing in the morning, coming across Lion Bridge, looking underneath it with the mist normally rising off the lake, and just seeing the house with that amazing jump, whatever it is this year in the lake. And I love that view on an event day morning at about 6. It's great.
When it's still quiet.
When it's still quiet.
There
is a serene quietness.
When everybody was leaving on Sunday evening, to be honest, Miranda.
No, that you're just tired then. But there's a bit of a tinge of sadness to that. But also, yeah, it is. But it's also quite entertaining because the bun fight really starts at about 5 o'clock on a Sunday, when everyone starts jostling for all the trade stands and all the big contractors start jostling for position at the front of the queue to get into site at 5 o'clock on a Sunday.
How long does it take to take the site down post-event? Because the park closed or partially closed to the public from the 1st of August and became that building site. So we're looking at 4 weeks essentially, there or thereabouts. How long does it take to bring it back down again?
Yeah, so it goes up in 5 and down in 2. And we're lucky we have the most amazing site foreman, a chap called Chris. And he works with a chap called Jack from Woodhouse, who's been coming for 40 years. Chris has been here 14 years. Jack's been coming for 40 years and actually told me this year he was going to retire next year, which I think he said about 10 years ago as well. So so it goes up slowly but comes down really quickly, because actually, the Blenheim's just straight after us. So Marquees move on to that, Grandstands move on to something else, Lewes go somewhere else. So the site strips really quickly. And also we want to get the park back open for the public.
Miranda, what does your event week look like? Because you're welcoming hundreds of thousands of people into your gardens, essentially.
Yeah.
What does it feel like, and what does it look like?
It's so exciting. I love it. Get up in the morning. I do sort my clothes out before the weekend starts, because days are short or long, depending how you look at them. Time at home is short, and bang on the badge and set off to the event area. And often we have formal lunches. We look after sponsors. One of the great highlights is a trade stand breakfast we do in the morning to thank everybody who's brought all the retail to the site, which is great. And just seeing everybody, actually, just being out there and chatting to anyone who's doing what they're doing and making sure everything's okay. And we host a cocktail party here at the house for competitors, sponsors, local dignitaries, committees, anyone involved in an official way with the horse trials, and owners of the horses, of course. They're very important to us. And we have a pretty packed schedule up at the hospitality marquees.
Keep you very busy. There is so much going on, but I think it's one of you kind of said, seeing all those people again. Actually, one of the things that we're going to so enjoy about welcoming everybody back to the Land Rover Burghley Horse Trials this year is those friends that we haven't seen for 3 years, and people that we perhaps only see once a year, that we kind of actually will be able to catch up with. Exactly. And quite often you think, God, has it really been 3 years? But actually it has, and a lot of water is under the bridge, or not, so to speak, this year. That was a terrible analogy, listeners. I can live and dream, my rain dance will come to fruition at one point.
Not during the event.
No. Just heavy between, or a good solid amount in the next 5 days would be grand. And then the sun can shine. But look, it is brilliant to be back here at Burghley. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for everything that you do for the horse trials as a whole, because it is just an enormous team effort. And I hope, listeners, that this show has kind of given you a little bit of background, because it isn't just Burghley. Every big event that we are fortunate enough to go to takes an enormous army of people to enable it to happen. And we can never take it for granted, because it just simply isn't possible without them. So, if you can support them in other ways, please do. And there will be so much that you will be able to enjoy from those events outside of just the eventing. But of course, we love the eventing, and we are looking forward to this year. Who will be lifting that trophy on the Sunday evening? Well, we'll have all of the coverage for you on the Eventing podcast. And we've still got some good shows coming your way on the Inside Burghley series as well. Derek DeGrazia will be giving us an insight into his brand new cross-country course for 2022. But Miranda, David, thank you both so much.
Thanks, Nicole.
Busy week, 10 days ahead of you. So I will let you crack on with what I'm sure is a very long day ahead, but we really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks so much.
Listeners, there you have it, the latest in the Inside Burghley podcast series. Now, don't forget, if you ever get the opportunity to put Burghley House on your list of places to visit. If you're here this week, then enjoy it. If you're here on the Wednesday, come and have a look around the house before you start, before the first horse inspection. But just take a moment to look round when you're here and appreciate everything that goes on to put the horse trials on, because it is extraordinary. And remember, take a selfie with that tree. I'll think of a hashtag, listeners, or poor Rosie will be putting her head in her hands at this point thinking, what the hell is she going on about? No, we want you to get involved as well. And if you're here at Burghley, then please do so, and we can have some fun with it as well. But for now, that is all we've got time for, and we'll be back very soon on the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast.